Just gonna get time to let some other people get on. Good morning to everybody who's jumping on already. Good morning, everybody jumping on. Real quick, do me a favor before we jump into this. Name your gear in the comment section. Let me know what you're playing on, like 4, 5 string, what kind of axe you got, what kind of amp you got, if you're happy with it. If you don't like it, just drop that in the comment section as I wait for some more people to jump on before we get into it. All right, so for the people that's jumping on, I see you, Dave. I've asked the guys, I'm only going to repeat this a few more times. I asked the guys to drop whatever bass you're playing, if you're a guitar player or whatever, drop your gear down in the comment section. Like if you play 4 string, 5 string, 6 string, 12 string, yeah. Drop that down in the comment section below. Like if you have a whatever amp you have, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. There's a reason I'm doing it, and I just want you guys to drop it down in the comment section below. Let me know if you like your gear, you love it, or you're hoping to get something else. Drop that in the comment section. I'm just gonna kind of give some more people time to jump on before we officially jump into a little groove and a little discussion. I see you. So welcome to everybody that's on. I'm just knocking some dust off my fingers early this morning. Is the sound okay? Everybody cool? You can hear okay? Drop a thumbs up if you can hear. I had everybody to in the comments to drop their sweet. I see you. I had everybody to drop the name of your gear, whatever you're playing, in the comments section below. Like if you're playing a 4, 5, 6 string, and for the people who already heard me say this like twice, sorry. But drop the name of your bass and your amp, or if you play guitar, whatever gear you play, drop that in the comment section below. So the reason why I was asking about that, obviously you can see the title of today's post, and I'm going to play some more too for the people that want me to play. I'll play a little bit more, but I'm going to just kind of share a little bit. This is our time to talk a little bit. But one of the things I wanted to say, as you saw the title of this stream, is use what you have. And sometimes, a lot of times we feel, especially as musicians, you know, with the next or the latest gear that's out, we feel like we need to kind of buy something else, or buy something a little different. Show of hands of the people who feel like they need some more stuff. Of course, that never goes away. Even myself, at times I feel like I need something else. I feel like there's something I need to get, something I need to add to my arsenal. You know, LTD fretless 5 string, I see you. But I'll give you guys a little backstory about me. One, I didn't start out as a bass player. I started out as a guitar player officially when I really got deep into music. I started playing drums first. I was okay on drums when I started playing. I could, you know, keep time and that type of thing, nothing serious. But officially, I think I got serious about guitar. I started studying guitar about that time. I joined the band. I'm not going to give you this long history, but first things first, I was a guitar player. So when I did actually pick up bass, I was always playing someone else's bass. I never had my own until I got to college, and I purchased my first bass. It was like a Mexican Fender Jazz Ibanez 5 string. I'm very familiar with Ibanez basses. I played a lot of those basses. I actually played, when I first started, I was playing, a Rogue. Anybody ever heard of Rogue basses? R-O-G-U-E? I was actually playing like a 5 string. I think my mom had like a Rogue bass. So that's what I was playing first. And my first bass I actually purchased was a 5 string Mexican Fender. It was a Fender Jazz, Mexican 5. It was Fender Jazz Deluxe to be exact. Entry bass. Yep. So, and I was playing some other no-name basses too around that same time. So again, my introduction to basses was that first Mexican 5 string bass, and I played that bass for years up until the point that I moved to Atlanta. I think I played it within the first couple of years of me playing at New Birth before I actually switched to another bass. And in that, I learned so much that I just simply didn't know. I didn't come from a technical standpoint of learning how to play the bass. And again, I give y'all my sad story of no YouTube when I first started and no bass lessons or anything like that. I see you. Okay, I see you with the Ibanez basses. But yeah, I came from a standpoint that I didn't have YouTube or anything like that. So I didn't really understand tone uh, much to any. I mean, I knew how to get a good sound. And it's weird. I didn't really know how to set my bass. And I think with those, that Fender Deluxe, you had like I think you had like a front pickup, back pickup volume, and then you had like a low, like your lows, and then you had your highs, a stack, and then like the mids at the back, if I'm not mistaken. I don't completely remember the EQ setup for that bass, but I didn't really understand much of anything but just turn up and play. And I hope it wasn't too muddy. I knew how to not have my bass sounding too muddy. So, I just kind of worked with what I had. The bass I'm playing now is actually a Warrior bass, and I'll get to that. I'll get to that story. But yeah, well, the basses that most people know me for playing Warrior basses. So yeah, I see you with the Ibanez. Ibanez is really like, y'all is really out here playing the Ibanez basses. That's cool though. I play Ibanez, and Ibanez really has some cool, affordable basses. That's really cool sound. But when I was playing my Fender, man, I knew nothing about tone at all. And when I started playing at a church down here in Atlanta, actually Newburgh. It was a friend of mine, Dario Edgecombe, who was the music director at the time, who started teaching me a lot about tone, because I had no idea. Like, a lot of you guys start out with great basses, and like y'all get the works and y'all learn all the technical stuff first, which is cool because now, of course, we have YouTube. You got access, to like all of these lessons that teach you how to set up your bass, teach you how to get good tone, which is great. But for me, it was just like, I was just figuring it out as I went along. And even with recording, because I was still recording stuff and writing music and creating during that time, I just had to kind of just tweak until I got what I wanted. And I think even in that recording thing, if you watch any of my other lessons, I always stress the fact about, I think recording is such a good idea. It helps you to discover your tone, your sound. It helps you to really kind of fine tune the sound of your bass if you're listening back to the playbacks, because more times than not, you're going to hear that playback and you're going to be like, oh man, that sounds terrible. Or if you're anything like me, you're going to hear that playback and you're going to be like, man, that sounds terrible. Yep, it's definitely constructive, Mario. It's definitely constructive criticism when you're listening to yourself, when you're listening to that playback, or if you're playing at a church or at a gig or something. If you have a way to record that gig and listen to yourself, hear that playback, it's good. It's good in helping you to refine that tone and really kind of learn the bass. Again, you have all of these useful tools now on YouTube, and I don't disregard any of those things, but to be honest, this is my honest opinion, I think trial and error in the moment, like when you're actually in the gig or when you're actually on the scene with different band members and that kind of thing, they help you to really build that tone, to build that sound, to get the most out of your instrument. Because a lot of times what I found, the reason why I had you guys dropping the name of your bass below, a lot of times what I found, sometimes we think the bass is off. Like, man, this thing suck. I can't get a good sound out of it. I can't. And sometimes that's the case. Your bass suck. I'm just being honest. I've had that happen where my stuff sounded like a mess. But more times than not, I found that it was due to me not knowing how to play, not knowing how to get a good sound out of my hands. We all have a natural tone, but we all have to figure out how to dial into that natural tone. Because I could just turn my bass up and turn all the knobs up. Once we buy a bass, we just turn everything up. You don't really know, It's cool, but that's not necessarily the sound that I prefer. But if I start tweaking the tone and dialing in different things, rolling back off some stuff, depending on how my bass is set up, if I start kind of experimenting with hand position and all that kind of stuff, I start to learn more about the actual bass. I start to learn more about the different tones, the different options that I have of tones with the same bass. So a lot of times you may be looking for something different. And I mean, and of course, there are exceptions to the rule. Like if you're playing a bass and your rig, you have like 4 or 5 speakers blown, and you only have you have like a 210, you got 4 speakers blown, you know you got a problem. Obviously, I'm being funny. But I mean, sometimes it's most of the time we don't know how to set it up. Sunday at church found out someone's tone on there. You know what I'm saying? It's that kind of thing. And the best way to do it, I'm glad I didn't see what the name was that posted that comment, but that's a great point. And it was going to bring me to my next point. A lot of times, it's great if you have access to a really good player. Let that other person play your bass before you sell it, before you get rid of it, before you think you need to buy another bass. Let that other player play it. Whitaker, I see you. So like, let the other person play your bass and see what kind of tone they get out of it, and that will really tell you if it. And this is the cold hard truth. It's going to tell you if it's the bass or the instrument, or it's going to tell you if it's you, the player. And it shouldn't be a thing for you to be discouraged once you hear somebody else, because that's another thing. I mentioned a good friend of mine, the music director at the time, Dario, phenomenal keyboard player. Dude plays everything, but I would hand him my bass if it was a song I didn't know. That's another thing. I wasn't too proud, like, to try to just play through a song that I didn't know and cause the whole band to go down in flames. I would give my bass up to him and let him play. I mean, because that option was available to me. But I gave him my bass, and when he started playing it, it was completely different from the sound that I was getting. I mean, it was so much more clarity. It was so much more punch. I mean, I'm like, I didn't even know that bass could sound like that, because I'm ready to get rid of it. And I'm hearing this person playing it, and they're getting a completely different sound. Again, going back to the fact, a lot of the tone is in your hands, as I said before. But sometimes you have to learn how to get the best sound out of your hands. Because if you take your hands and just beat on a rubber band, you're not going to get that great of a tone. But if you figure out how to, with your bass, how to kind of tweak and get the best sound. I know certain people, good friends of mine, who are phenomenal bass players, they can get any bass in their hand and they can always seem to find their tone on whatever instrument they're playing. I'm like, how does he do that? You know, at first I used to be like, how do they do that? But now I know how they do it. They know their sound, and they know what they're looking for when they pick up a bass. It doesn't matter if the bass is a little Squire bass, or if it's a Fender, or if it's a Federa, if it's a high-end Warrior, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, you can make a pretty decent sound on any instrument when you know what your sound is. But it all comes with, like I was saying earlier, spending that time, doing things like recording yourself and really listening when you're playing, not having your bass up so loud all the time. That's another thing. Volume can play a really huge role in that. When you play at different volume levels and that kind of thing, and play at lower volume levels, it can really kind of bring out your tone. I can sometimes play, well, I used to do it a lot. I would play with nothing, just me hearing the acoustics of the bass. And I can really hear, I don't know if you guys can hear that well coming through this recording, but I can get a full tone of what this actual bass sound like. And hearing that, it gives me a good idea of what it's supposed to sound like. So I don't have to use my amp, you know, all of that stuff to try to color up my sound, because I know the natural sound of this bass is already good, just hearing it. And this is just with strings and wood alone. You know, you're getting the sound of that bass. You're getting the natural sound of the bass. So now once I start adding stuff to it, like as far as EQ and all that kind of stuff, I know what I'm looking for. So if I set my entire bass flat, I know what I should expect without beefing it up too much. Now that's the natural sound of this bass. This is me boosting the volume. And that's a cool sound to me. It's really clean. It's not overbearing. It's not over anything. You know, it's not too much lows. It's not too much mids. It's just a good, great balanced sound. And that just comes from listening to what it is that I already have going on. I haven't did any EQ. My EQ is flat. I'm not boosting highs, not boosting lows. I mean, again, it does have a lot to do. And I don't want to lead you guys to believe, oh man, any bass should. No, it does have, at the end of the day, sometimes it does have a lot to do with the actual instrument that you're playing. Obviously, this particular bass I have is a custom bass. I do have fresh strings on it, somewhat. My strings probably about a week old or so. And so that does make a difference in the sound. There is a good preamp and stuff already in the bass, but I'm not really, hear me, I'm not really boosting that preamp right now. I'm just using kind of the natural sound of the bass. My amp is generally pretty flat how I normally set my amp. The only thing I think I have boosted right now is just a little high end. But even if I roll back on those, because it's very minimal, even if I roll back on those that high end, it's still going to be very present, you know. Now this is just me boosting the highs just a little bit. Now you get an extra crisp, and you can hear that string fret noise, you know. But for me, a lot of times when I record, especially when I'm playing solos, I try to emulate the voice. I don't try to do it intentionally. I think that that's just a preferred sound for me because I do sing. Does the wood make a difference? Yeah, it does. I didn't think it did. That you kind of bringing me to my Warrior story. I didn't really think the wood made a difference in the sound, but it actually does make a difference. You can hear the difference in the tonality. Now, is it going to make or break your playing, make or break your presentation as far as what you have? If you sound terrible on a great bass, you're going to sound terrible on a bad bass. Vice versa. If you sound terrible on a bad bass, you're going to probably sound terrible on an even more high-end bass. So a lot of it goes back to your tone, your personal tone, how you've developed your own sound. So for instance, I'll plug up this, this would be a great comparison. I'll plug up this Squire over here. Does not have fresh strings on it. Because I'm playing a high-end bass. That's, you know, a couple $1,000 bass. And this is a Squire bass. $200, maybe. Like I say, old strings on it and everything. But because I know what sound I'm looking for, I kind of know what to do to get it. All right, so just off, right off top, my regular bass is tuned half step down. Most of you guys know I play half step down. I only tune standard for lessons and for teaching and that kind of stuff. So that's why I have basses that are like different. So now I haven't really EQ'd much of anything. And this bass is pretty much, you could kind of turn up everything and play. But obviously there's a difference in the sound. But still the punch and everything is there. I mean, you still can get the point across. It doesn't have as clean of an EQ as that bass, obviously, because it's custom, you know? So, I mean, and this, you mentioned about the maple, this difference in the sound of the wood, that's making a difference, the most difference in the tone, because even if I turn everything off like we did earlier and turn all the EQ off and just play, you can hear that the sound of this wood is a little darker as compared to me playing this Warrior not plugged up. See if I can do this. You hear it's a completely different sound. No EQ, no volume if you really listen, and hopefully you guys can hear this. Okay, so we have that. Even with the difference of fresh strings versus not so fresh strings. These are older strings. you could hear a subtle difference. Yeah, it's a little bit more distinction in the warrior bass, and a lot of that has to do with the obviously newer strings and the wood. So what is that? I actually prefer dual coil. To be honest, I think over the years I've kind of grown to like that sound more because that's what I kind of have in my six string. I like the versatility of the soap bars and for me personally and the dual coil. I'm not a technical guy. I've said that thousands of times, but just for the way and the style of playing that I have and the way I like to go back and forth. Um, what's going on, Stephanie? But the way I like to play going back and forth, it gives me a lot more versatility. And I even, going back to the question about the woods, my six string bass is a Purple Heart neck as opposed to the maple neck and as opposed to the rosewood. I've grown to like the sound of the Purple Heart. When I first began getting a custom bass built, I had no clue about woods, and I really didn't think it was that big of a deal. But when I played it against other basses I had played, I heard the difference in it. Even from my five string to my six string, the difference. I got to change the strings on my six string, so I'm not going to plug it up right now. But I heard the difference. Good morning. Good morning. I heard the difference in the sound of the woods when I played my six string versus my five string warrior, and I was like, oh man, it is like a huge difference. And that's another thing. Me getting to go to some place like a warrior when I was first kind of getting introduced to the custom bass, seeing the boutique, the boutique bass. It is an experience. If you guys are anywhere close to somewhere that like manufactures boutique basses, or I'll throw out Warrior for instance because that's that's what I play. If you have an opportunity to go to the actual place that they create them and play all of the different basses and hear all the different tone options, all the different sounds, and see how it feels in your hand, you'll see the difference, and now you can make a really well-informed decision of, okay, I get it, or too much, or like, yeah, it don't take all of that. And it's personal preference. I don't knock anybody from any side of the track because obviously, like we were talking about earlier, I played for years on cheap basses and I got the job done. It's just when I started developing my own sound more and my preference started to change in terms of what I was wanting to hear, because before I got a Warrior bass, I was playing a Warwick thumb. Some of you may remember that I was playing a bolt-on thumb, a five string, what was that? Looking into the MD custom bass dream. I mean, like I said, but here's the thing though, and even kind of take me, don't buy basses based on hype. Don't buy a Warrior because I play it. Don't buy an MTD because Justin Raines or somebody else plays it. Don't buy, what's my guy Derek Bennett. Don't buy the bass that he Elric just because he plays it. Even Yannick Wisdala. I love the sound of that Madison bass that he plays, but I wouldn't go buy one just based on how his sound. I would definitely take the time out and try it out for myself and see what I like about the bass and if it even fits the way that I play. Because it may sound great with someone else playing it, it may sound great in their hand. It just happens to enhance their sound, or their natural sound might sound great coupled with that particular brand of bass. So a lot of times you can't always base the sound of or that particular brand of instrument on your playing. Me personally, I don't think I do my best work on Fender basses. And that's my personal opinion. I like a Fender. I like the sound of a Fender. And I like to hear other people play in that bass. Obviously, Marcus Miller. Yeah, I do use this Spectra drive. I did a review as far as answering that question about outboard, stuff. I use the Spectra drive by TC Electronic. I think you guys should check out that video I did on my page. Go back to my page after this. Yeah, I have to unplug it and everything for you guys to see that. But it's a Spectra Drive bass preamp that I use. I don't religiously use it all the time, but if I do, that's what I use. That Spectra Drive bass preamp. But I mean, again, getting back to the meat and potatoes of this before I get way too far off, because I know I gotta play. I told you I was gonna play again. Um, but the whole point of it is, it's good morning, whoever that is. But the whole point of it is using what you have and really developing your sound on what you have. I'm not saying anything against purchasing new equipment, buying a new bass, buying a new rig. Of course, we all want to upgrade our gear. You don't want to stay with the same stuff. But a lot of times, you can be in a position to where financially, you're not. What is that? Can technique help your tone? It could. Having a better technique could definitely help your tone, because if you're playing like with your thumb, or and not saying that there's anything wrong with thumb playing. I played with my thumb for years. But sometimes having a bad technique could affect your playing. It's not the end all. It's some people who I would consider have terrible technique, but they sound amazing. So it's not always, that is kind of loose for me to say, yeah, having a great technique definitely makes the difference in your playing. It can make a difference, but it doesn't make a break, in my opinion. Having a good versus bad technique. That's just my personal opinion. Waverly. So yeah, I was just saying about, in terms of when it comes to the gear that you have, you might be in a financial position. Some of you watching this video, or whoever will watch it in a replay, might be in a financial position that you don't have the resources necessary to get the gear that you want. And in that, I want to tell you, use what you have. Make the best of what you have. If you can't afford something, you can't afford anything but just new strings. Do what you can. Get that bass that you have set up. Take it to someone if you don't know how to do it yourself, and have it professionally set up. Get some good strings on it. You may need your frets or something shaved down or something. It could be a number of things that you could do, even replacing the pickups and the preamp in the existing bass that you have, until you're in a position where you're able to buy something else. That way you don't put yourself in a bind, quote unquote, trying to keep up with the Joneses. It was years before I bought what I considered a real, like, expensive bass. Not that it mattered to have an expensive bass, but I guess for me, I grew up basically poor. So I always played on cheap stuff. So I didn't know what it was like to play on something really, really nice. Uh, but I made the most out of it. Play Ibanez. Okay, I see you. So, for me, it was a thing of, once I finally got around certain sounds and I would hear other people play certain basses. Like, I didn't just go after Warrior because, oh, that's an expensive bass, I want an expensive bass. It wasn't even about that for me. It was, I heard several people play them, and I was just blown away by the sound of the bass. As a matter of fact, I bought my Warwick bass before I even tried to even pursue getting a Warrior. Number one, I couldn't. At that time, I couldn't afford it, and I thought, I didn't know enough about woods. I didn't understand. Hold on, I'm missing some comments. You can have all the licks. Technique. Yeah, exactly, Mario. Uh, you know what I'm saying? And it's all about that. It's all about taking what you have and making the most of what you have, and not getting intimidated when somebody else comes around you with something that's better. Like I said, I waited years before I bought what I considered a bass that would match, what I was hearing in my ears. Because, to be honest, after I explored my Fender, and the particular one I had, this is no knock against Fender at all, for any of you guys that's playing Fender bass. The particular bass that I had, after I explored it, I kept new strings on it, set up and everything. It was still something missing for me in terms of what I was looking for personally, as I began to discover more of my sound. I got closer to finding that when I got the Warwick bass. I started really honing in on my sound and figured out kind of what that is. And I think once I got this bass, I really started digging more. And I'm still exploring now. I have my sound, but I'm still exploring because there's so much there. Even with the bass, there's so many other options of tones on just this bass alone before I even get to any of these other basses in here that I'm always constantly finding. So make sure you completely explore. I'm not saying don't get another bass. By all means, if you have the money to do so, buy all of them you want. But if you're in a position to where you don't have the resources to get a better instrument or something like that, don't let that intimidate you. Keep growing, keep working, keep pushing yourself. And you'll get to the sound that you want to get to. And another thing I wanted to add, and I'm going to answer questions that I saw pop up, but another thing I want to add is make sure you continue to raise your personal value. A lot of people go after the goal before raising their personal value. And what I mean by that is like maximize the potential of what you have. Uh, are you doing anything with the current base that you have? I mean, granted, I know some people just play for recreation. And if that's the case and you got money to just keep buying stuff, by all means, I envy you a little bit. But for the people who want to make this for I try to get to some of that. But for the people who want to make this a career or this has became a career for you, you can't allow what you have to stop you from digging into learning more about the instrument and all that kind of stuff. Because I know some people who play some like very low end basses, but they sound amazing and they know how to get great tones out of it. Now, if you put them on a better bass, yeah, they would probably sound even more amazing. But it didn't stop them from using what they had, meaning raising their personal value. I don't want to speed past that statement. Raising your personal value. What are you doing to add value to other people? If you have the time and you are a great player already in your city or in your space, what are you doing to add value to other people? That raises your personal value. When you add value to others, it raises your personal value. Like finding a little kid that's trying to learn, you know what I'm saying? And giving to that kid. Even if you don't have a bass to give away, buy them a set of strings. That's really a key. Another key to raising your own personal value, being a giver. Buy a set of strings for a kid that needs, some bass. If you can't afford a set of strings, I mean, buy a cable. I mean, something. Do something to give to someone else. Give them a lesson. If you don't have any money to give them a lesson. Help somebody else get started. Even if you don't think you're that great of a player, just do something to give back to somebody else, to add value to somebody else, and you continue to raise your own personal value when you do that. So let me hit some of these questions before I have to jump off really quick. Something else. How did you start? I'll say. All right. How did you start your professional career? To be honest, I don't even know if there was an official start. It's just like I was playing and job opportunities started opening up. And I just kept myself open for, whatever the opportunities was, because it's like, when do you become a professional? That's an even better question. What classifies you as a professional? Because if you're playing at a place, it might not be lights, camera, action type deal, but you're getting paid an amount of money to play at a place. People are compensating you for what you're bringing to the table, and you're showing up on time. You know the music. You kill the gig. You get paid at the end of the night. That's a professional to me. You know what I'm saying? That might be too dumbed down for most people, but there are people who are on professional gigs, to me, in my opinion, who are not professional. Let that sink in for a minute, because if you're not learning the material, if you're coming in, even just as far as the work environment, you're making it a bad environment for other people to be in because of your attitude. You don't learn music. You don't know your part really well. I mean, it's just, that doesn't make you a professional, because you can be playing at Backwood Baptist Church somewhere and getting paid like, $25, $35, $40, $50 a Sunday, and you're doing a great job. And you're handling your business. You show up on time. You show up prepared. You have your gear. If they don't have an amp or whatever, they can't afford it, you providing your own gear. You're a professional. That makes you a professional. The gig doesn't make you a professional. You being a professional makes you a professional, in my personal opinion, personal, humble opinion. Like I said, I think I was a professional long before I got certain job titles, because that's just the way I carried myself. Even when I was playing keyboard and guitar for little quartet groups, even gigs that I wasn't getting paid for, because I don't want to give the idea that you're a professional only if you're getting only if you're getting paid. That's not true either, because there were gigs that I was doing that I wasn't getting paid for, but I was still showing up on time, knowing the music, having my gear ready to go when it was time to go. I was there and I did the things that were necessary. So when I got to bigger platforms, I was already a professional. So in my humble opinion, that's the answer to that question. Not to spend too much time there, because I'm seeing other stuff pop up that I'm missing. Y'all forgive me. Y'all know how it is when I'm trying to answer the questions. So, all right. Sidetracking, which is preferred string spacing at the bridge. I'm not that technical. I mean, it's just I don't have a technical number for that question as far as string spacing. Not for me. Not right now at this point. Let's see here. Do you adjust your tone according to which genre you play? Of course. Depending on the song. It really depends on the song. It's not so much the genre as it is the song. Because you can be playing jazz and it might call for, something that's a little more in your face. Or you can be playing an R&B gig. Normally most R&B stuff, there's not a lot of bright stuff in most of the songs, but some songs it is. So you just can't put a blanket statement over, okay, this is the tone for this particular genre, because it could change. It could change. Even gospel songs, everything don't have to be slap bass and in your face. Everything don't have to be finger style, for each song. So I'm subject to change my tone on the gig to fit the song. I play what the song needs as opposed to what the genre calls for, because so many subgenres now within genres, you just can't set your bass one way and say this is my set for a jazz gig, and this is unless you're playing like upright and it's straight ahead jazz. Obviously there are things that fall between, but for the most part nowadays, if you're playing an electric instrument, if it's acoustic, you pretty much got about one option. There's going to be whatever the sound of that instrument is. But if it's an electric gig, you can kind of use variation when it comes to your playing. Let's see here. I'm missing some stuff, y'all. Give me a chance. Give me an opportunity to see what some of these questions are. Playing what you have is overlooked. We all get caught up in the new bass idea, but at the end of the day, what you hear is in your hands. Exactly. My point exactly. Great licks will work. Get you to YouTube. Yeah. Work ethic. Man, that's a great point. Work ethic. That's a tongue twisting word to say. Work ethic will definitely take you further. Having a great work ethic, just being one that shows up ready to go, ready to do your thing. I'm not going to belay that point. I know I've already spent a lot of time on that, but work ethic. Y'all spend some time on that one. Let's see here. Missing some other questions. As they say in my church, attitude determines your altitude. Come on. Yep. If you're playing for the love of it, you can't go. Exactly. As long as you keep that in front of you. Who's your favorite bass player at the moment? I actually don't have one at the moment. There's so many good players out there. I got people who've inspired me over the years, but if I had to narrow it down to at this point in my career, Waverly, I'm getting the questions, man. I'm gonna get to playing. But at this point in my career, I don't have a particular player that I would say that's my favorite player, because there's so many people that I pull from. There's so many people that have inspired me. A lot of folks you don't even know. So I wouldn't say I have a great player. So let's see here. Trying to get to all y'all's questions. Who's your favorite player? Because another thing, Waverly, I'm not trying to disregard, but this is my time to connect with you guys. So I definitely want to try and answer as much as I can. because this, I'm gonna play in the videos that I post throughout the week, but this is my only time I get to really connect with you guys. So let's see here. Who am I missing? When plucking with 3 fingers, which one do you start with grading? If I understand completely what you're saying, I think plucking with 3 fingers, I don't know if you're referring to these 3 or these 3, I normally start with thumb first, depending on what it is I'm doing. Because normally you're going from, you're going ascending, you're going, that's generally what I would start with. But if you're talking here, it'd be the same thing. I would start with pointer. To answer that question, so it would be, pointer, middle, and then ring. That would be how I would play that. All right. Melvin Davis. Melvin Davis is a phenomenal player. Is Squire jazz bass okay for a newbie? Of course. Yeah, Squire jazz bass is fine for a beginner. Sorry. Loving the live streams. You should do. That's my plan, to do more live streams. And no, I'm not gonna do a bass one. I don't even know Davey. I know of him. I don't really know him. But yeah, so all right, I'm gonna do this tune, and for my guy Waverly, has been asking for it, and I promise you guys I will play again before I jumped off. This song I produced a while ago. I actually did a few videos on it, but I'm sure most of y'all probably haven't seen the video, so it might be new to y'all. So I'm gonna play this song here. The song is originally recorded in E flat, so I'm gonna be playing an E flat, open E flat today. Hopefully we don't have no issues. Let's see here. All right, here we go. Come on, Bobby McFerrin. Thank y'all, man. I was missing comments throughout the. I'm gonna try to go back and catch some of these comments that I missed. But yeah, that's a song I produced a few years ago. Let's see here. All right, I feel you should have your own signature bass, bro. I know, Rapid Warrior, just as good as Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. See, it's a funny story. I'm actually working on that with Warrior. When that will be out, I have no idea. Y'all go ahead and flood Warrior with some emails telling them that y'all want that signature bass, and let's get them rushed on, get them rushed on that. But yeah, we actually have one in the process and the workings there. Ron, uh, I'm liking the new two finger technique. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank y'all, man. I don't know if I'll get through all of these comments, but thank y'all today for watching. And I will be back on. We will do more live streams. This won't be the last one. So looking forward to connecting with you guys more. And thank you again for everybody that's watched today. I don't want to go completely a whole hour on this feed, but thank you guys for being here today. And any more questions that you have, be sure to drop them in the comments or shoot me a direct message, and I'll be happy to respond to you when I get the opportunity. But I'm out for today, guys. Thank you for hanging with me today. Need lessons? Check out JermaineMorgan.net. If you're not following me on Instagram, JMorganBase, JMorganBase at Instagram, JMorganBase on Twitter, Jermaine Morgan on Facebook, and I will catch you guys